what occurred the morning, and I don't remember the actual date.
November 8th.
November 8th. The morning of the 8th, what occurred that day?
I was right back at the house working on one of my elevated deer stands. I'm trying to get a roof on it before deer season opened that Saturday. It's a Wednesday morning, and I just backed down it. It's got a long stairway going up to it, and it's a little better for me to back down than it is walk down forward. And so I got down and I turned to walk to the front to get some sheet iron. I was going to tie it on my rope and pull it up, try to get a few sheets of metal up there so I could sit in there when it's raining, because a lot of times the deer is moving around a lot in the rain. And right behind me there was one fella stepped out and ordered me to get out on the ground or he would shoot, and it took me just a second or so to orient myself, but when I seen he was deadly serious, he had an AR-15, I believe it's full auto machine gun, pointed at my AR-16 at my middle section about 30 foot away. I took just a second or two to orient myself, and he might have told me again to get on the ground or he'd shoot, and I told him, if you just got to kill somebody, go ahead and shoot. I'm not getting on the ground. And I ordered him twice to get his gun off of me in no uncertain terms, and he did. He was shocked. He'd never been talked to like that.
Well, we're sitting here high atop a mountain in southeastern Washington County, the residence of Wayne Fincher. And we're going to try and discuss with Wayne what has gone on over the period of the last, about the last 9 months, and the things that have shaped Wayne's opinions, the things that have shaped his outlooks, and why he finds himself in the situation that he's in. So I'd like to introduce to you, of course, Wayne Fincher, and to his left, my dear friend Don Bright, who's a cohort in the talk radio business, and we're just sitting down here in outside of Wayne's house under this catalpa tree.
That's what it is.
That's what it is, and we're going to discuss what just the things you want to talk about, the things you want the public to know about Wayne.
Well, their questions is what need to be answered.
Exactly. Wayne, a lot of people don't know anything really about you. They know what they've seen in the papers. They you've been pictured as some wild-eyed gunslinger, some individual who is a danger to the community, a danger to the neighbors, I guess a danger to our nation. Tell us a little bit about who Wayne Fincher is. Start back with how your family came to be here at this beautiful location, and just bring us on forward to who you are and how your life has been shaped by.
Well, it's written in the record book of Washington County that we came from the Carolinas, I believe, and come across the rivers and down the Mississippi and up the Arkansas and to Fort Smith, and they sold their boats and bought wagons and come on up here to the Elkins area here and settled down, and we've been here ever since. I've heard the family say they have one grandfather great-grandfather that fought for the North and one for the South. And so we've been in here, I guess, in the mid-1850s or maybe before. I'm not sure exactly when it came, but we've lived in this country. As far as my family remembers back, we've been here. Mm-hmm. And I lived in this house when I was in the first grade. I walked that road there to the school bus and back, and I've lived here with my wife for 41 years.
If I may interject here, that road he so casually referred to is quite a trail. How far is that road down to the Blacktop? Do you have any idea?
It's 1 mile to the pavement right here.
Well, the way it bumps and winds and turns up and down, it seems like 3 miles.
Yeah.
It's home. You never think about it.
Well, true. You know, the question that I asked Don while we were driving up here, this is the first time I've been to the place here, and I say, folks, it's actually absolutely beautiful and peaceful up here.
Oh, you can't believe it.
Define serenity.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how did anybody find this hilltop to homestead?
There were little homesteads all over this place. You can see where they've stacked the rocks, and there used to be cabins here, but they get a fire out and they'd burn the little thing. But there were several of them around in here, and it's a hard country to live in. It took tough people to do it, and they did. They donated some land for that church. Oh. It used to be called Crossroad there because if you'll notice the road that come up to my house, went on back into the mountains up here, and there was a four-way cross right there.
Oh.
And Grandpa had a blacksmith shop and a little store and a grist mill down there, and they had a farm, and so we've been, his father's owned it before that, so we've been here all this time right here.
Wayne, part of what you, I think, are made of, and we're hearing that story now, is the fact that your forefathers apparently had a deep desire to be free.
Yeah.
To live an unfettered life and to be somewhere where they could enjoy freedom and do their own thing and not bother anybody else and vice versa. I think, knowing you, I don't know you real well, but I've known you for quite a while, that probably is the imprint that was left on you that has made you what you are, I think.
Yeah, I require a lot of freedom. Some people wouldn't live out here if you gave it to them, but I wouldn't trade it for the nicest home in Fayetteville. This is my home out here. This is where I live, and I can fish here. I can hunt. You know, we got wood, water, everything on this place. Hunt turkey, hunt deer.
Yep.
I stay home a lot because I like it here.
I noticed a deer stand as I was coming in. You say you've got another up the mountain up here. So.
And he's got a pond full of fish that he won't tell me where it is.
Well, I noticed some fishing poles out here beside the house as well. Well, you said your grandfather was a blacksmith. Did that have anything to do with you going into machinist work and so on?
Well, bound to. My daddy was kind of a blacksmith and a truck mechanic and a little bit of everything. He was kind of an inventor. You had to build your own stuff, fix your own, repair your own equipment, make do with what you had.
Yeah.
And that's just the way they were. They just grab up anything and make something out of it or fix it or go on with it because there wasn't any other way to get it.
Right.
And so they're very innovative, and Daddy helped everybody up and down the countryside. He was a pretty good mechanic, and they'd come and get him at any time of day or night, come work on their cars or the haying equipment or whatever. And my grandfather, he made the buggy wheels and all of the blacksmith stuff for this county. I've still got the old grist mill. I mean, my son-in-law was getting ready to put it together here before this incident here came along, but we still will.
Yep. Well, where did you go to school at? You say you walked down to the blacktop. Where did you go to school?
We went to school at Elkins.
Elkins.
My brother went to school at the Black Oak Church, but they changed it to Consolidation right after his early school, my older brother. And me and my sister, we would ride down my daddy on the way to work and walk back up that hill, just little fellas, and go to school at Elkins. So I started out first grade in Elkins School District.
Well, you said you've been married to this lady over here for 41 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a feat nowadays. That is something you just don't hear of, people being married 40 years.
Well, I think that's the way the good Lord would have it.
Well, I agree with you. So I guess y'all become pretty attached to each other. Mm-hmm. And what it tells me is that the life that you have chosen to live up here, on where you were raised, is a life pretty appealing to your wife as well, or she wouldn't still be up here.
She likes it too.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Well, let's come on forward a little ways in your life. You've been a tinker and inventor all your life, I guess. You've done different things. And you mentioned earlier that you you mentioned to me, not on tape here, but you mentioned to me at one time that you started gaining interest in the Constitution because of some of your dealings with the legal system and trying to get some patents established.
I built a compound bow, and I didn't have the money to go get it patented by an attorney like everybody else did, so I got me a book and studied it, and found it very interesting. And so I applied for a patent using the knowledge I gained in that book, and my patent went through almost without a hitch. And when I picked up the Constitution, I said, hey, this is nothing in the world but a patent. And I found the rules, most of the rules of the patent apply to the Constitution. If you're going to write a document that everybody can read, you simply have to use known rules of construction, and a patent is very precise, and the Constitution is too.
So in studying the patent laws, you realize that our laws in general are basically a contract.
Yeah, they have to be written in such a way that everyone that reads them can get the same results. And that's where the federal government meets its doom, really. They go out of business when they start trying to misconstrue something, because you can go back to the Constitution and read it for yourself.
Exactly.
And so,
Before we get away from your patent, I want you to show everybody your boat here. I was very impressed with this.
well, it's simply an innovative, brand new design. It took a long time to come up with this, but I just threw out. I started with a blank sheet of paper. Applied the principles of known sciences, and I come up with
It's kind of an enclosed compound.
Yeah.
Closed compound boat.
I had a lot of people want to buy them, but I just couldn't produce them.
Yeah.
And who knows, down the road maybe so. But anyway, if you follow the laws of physics, they will work for you. You can't break them.
That's right.
You have to obey them. So
Exactly.
I learned a lot there. That the laws of physics and laws of God's government
Yeah,
don't lie, don't make mistakes. And that's the way I see it.
that makes perfect sense to me.
How you're talking about contracts. You know, today, I'm sure you're more aware of this than most of us, but today a contract, by today's definition, isn't really worth, as the saying goes, the paper is. Now, it should be, don't get me wrong, but I think people look at contracts today as something that, as long as they like it, they're going to stay with it, and when they don't, and they're not going to. And talking about your ancestors that were up here, like a lot of people I've met, especially the older ones here in Arkansas, you don't need to sign a contract with them. Their word is their bond, and a contract then was a very, very important issue.
Exactly. I mean, you'd be surprised how many large-scale business deals are still done just the word of mouth. Sometimes you write it down, but no matter what you write down, it's always an oral agreement first.
That's right.
And so there's got to be rules if it's going to be understood by others. And you go back to the fundamentals that you must contain enough information in your contract that another party can decide what the function of it is, what it does and what it doesn't do. And that's what the Constitution does. It puts into the hands of each individual that contract, and he can read it, and if it needs to be, get a dictionary, and they'll tell you exactly what it says.
I think something Don said there is very important, too. Looking back at the documents that our founding fathers wrote, they were men of integrity. They were men of honor. They were men whose word, whose handshake meant everything. And for them to put something down on paper, they said what they meant and meant what they said.
Exactly.
There wasn't any aura about it. There wasn't any penumbra.
Penumbra, yeah, that's my favorite word. We got our Supreme Court justices finding stuff in the shadows now.
That made it mean something opposite to what it said.
Sure, yeah.
And of course, as we continue to discuss your present situation, trying to abide by what is written and what is practiced, it's hard to make those things come together this day and time.
Well, it wouldn't be if the people have swore to uphold the Constitution to do just that.
That's true.
When they start twisting and trying to obscure what it says to anyone, that's when we start having problems. You've got several federal district courts that ruled all different kinds of, made rulings against each other,
Yeah.
and they can't even reconcile it to their own courts.
Well, I noticed during your trial that your lawyer brought up some cases, and it was a statement was made. Well, that was in another jurisdiction in another district, and so we don't honor that decision. So it's basically whatever we want to do, we'll do. It's our court, and that's a dangerous.
Wrong.
That's a dangerous.
It's totally
situation.
wrong.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Well, I think we can see this, I'm a little off the subject here, but I think of that when I hear a judge say, that will not happen in my courtroom. And that's not his courtroom or her courtroom. It's our courtroom, and what they won't allow is allowable. Because we're guaranteed a right by a trial by a jury, not a judge.
That's exactly right.
And I know Wayne, and that's a contract too.
That's right. And of course, all of these judges, with the exception of the Supreme Court itself, all these other judges have been put in place by act of Congress. Congress has control over these things, but they have been they have been cowed as well. Of course, we can talk about some of that a little later. The thing that put you out in the forefront and made you, shall we say, a person of interest, the fact that you have been very vocal in your opinions, in your practices. You've not tried to hide from anything.
No.
You've not tried to throw a thing in anybody's face, but at the
No.
same time, you've not sneaked around and done things in the darkness. And a lot of that came as a result of your involvement in the militia of Washington County.
Yes.
Tell us how that came about, when it came about, and how your involvement with the militia came to be.
Well, in the 90s, they were talking of disarming the American people. Mr. Clinton was, and we had the Waco incident and further, and I simply went and got my children's dictionary and looked up the Bill of Rights and saw what the Second Amendment said. I read it for myself and studied it and checked out the militia and another dictionary and a few things, and it's not real hard to do. You can see it's the security force of the people to protect their own states. Really, the militia is the court of no appeal. It's the last court. Mm-hmm. And that's why someone that doesn't love this country or its government would want to destroy the militia, because it's the arm that the people has to return to constitutional standard. So,
it's interesting, every time we see the term militia used. There's only one other term as vilified as the term militia, and that's Christian. That's the only other term that says vilified. I have never seen a term that was so hated and so turned with such prejudice as the word militia is in the media today. It's you can tell when that word is going to be used. The expressions change, the outlook changes, the tone of voice changes, and of course now everything throughout the world that is evil and dastardly is termed a militia.
well, you know, if I had the books and I couldn't show you where several $1 trillion went, and the people had an arm that could ultimately enforce the law upon me, I believe I would be afraid of the militia too.
Will
You
be.
know, if I had let America's fortune be slipped through my fingers, armed dictators all over the world, and introduced a banking system that's guaranteed to destroy this country, and on and on and on, I believe I would fear the security apparatus that the people have retained to themselves if I were that kind of person. I'm not, and I
You don't
don't
think it's
fear
any
them.
accident that the militia has been vilified then?
No, it's no accident.
And there are studies or stories that vindicate the fact that, or make evident the fact that when the Constitution was written, the term militia and the citizenry were interchangeable. One meant the other and vice versa.
They still do.
Well, it does. Unfortunately, that's not recognized by some people that we're talking about right now.
Again, the difference between the written law and practice. That's what you're.
But the Constitution still says the same thing.
I agree.
And that's what the law is.
Mm-hmm.
You can only uphold it, or you can desecrate it. You got your choice.
Yeah.
I choose to uphold it.
Well, as you begin to gather information about the Second Amendment and then, of course, the militia, how did the militia of Washington County come into being?
Well, I studied quite a while, and I wrote up a few pages on it, and I decided to hold a meeting and see if anybody was interested in pursuing it, and I did. We had the first meeting at the VFW hall there on 62, and March the 17th, I believe, in 2004. About 18 people showed up, and we've been holding militia musters ever since.
How many militia members have been arrested for shooting somebody of Washington County?
None that I know of.
How
Probably
many-
nationwide none.
How many militia members have been arrested or indicted for threatening to shoot somebody?
None that I know of.
How many militia members have been arrested for illegal gun charges?
I don't know of any on the illegal gun charges.
Okay. My point is, the militia members, and I know a bunch of them, tend to be some of the best neighbors, some of the best citizens of Northwest Arkansas, some of the people that I would prefer to do business with. They seem to be honest, upstanding people. They're not folks that are generally behind bars, well, with the exception of one of them, there's behind bars, but we're going to talk about that. The militia in Washington County has been exemplary of the kind of people that you'd want to be around.
Sheriff Elder told me up at the quorum court meeting one night, said, as far as we know, you people don't exist. You're under the radar. We don't even know you're out there. As far as any complaints, any trouble, anything, you don't even make a blip on our screen.
So you don't have troublemakers?
No.
You know, a common misconception here is, and you're talking about the militia being a dirty word as far as, and that's been done purposely.
Yeah, we call it the M word.
Yeah, the M word. But people think, well, they formed this group up there so they could all get guns and shoot them. And having and possessing guns had nothing to do with the origin of the militia.
They all had guns before and shot all they wanted.
Yeah.
But the actual intent of you doing that was to protect the right, not just of the militia members, but of everybody in this country to have weapons in order to protect themselves.
Arms is more proper.
Well, okay, arms.
Well, it's the birthright of America, and if you could look into our arms industry, the billions around of ammo that's made every year, it's not something that's just done in a corner. The American people gravitate to arms, as most people in the world do. There's Japanese that fly from Japan over here to shoot guns. There's people, when they have machine gun shoots, they fly from other countries to come to America. But free men will always have arms, because there's always men out there that will take what a free man's got if he doesn't have them.
That's exactly right.
And if you don't have arms, you're going to have to bow down to somebody that does have arms. That's just a rule of mankind.
That's where
If, for instance, a group of publishers or journalists were concerned about the government not paying any attention to and trying to get rid of the First Amendment, and they formed a group in order to combat this and to protect the rights of other people to have freedom of expression, that's no different than what you have done with the militia.
No. One just as viable and valuable as the other. When you lose freedom of press, then you can't get the truth out. And when you lose the right to arms, you can't protect the truth.
That's exactly right. And you know, that's one of the things that I was, as I've studied. You've prompted a lot of questions in my mind over the years, and I've done a lot of reading as a result of, and I think probably thousands of other people have too. You've made people think outside the conventional box. The conventional box is not where we need to be.
No,
but
sure.
The fact of the matter is, this militia here and every militia I know around the country, if gangs began to try to take over a city, they would be available.
Sure.
If a group of foreign insurgents came and began to try to go house to house, these groups would be available. These militias have such value, and they can be there when law enforcement may not be there, when the military definitely can't be there. The militia's available.
Katrina was a classic example of someone that, and there were probably a lot of militia activity that went unreported. But it's a classic example of what happens when people don't have the militia there to form up and to put a barrier against the criminal element.
And when they wait on government to take care of it.
Yeah, and when they can't defend themselves.
Right.
Exactly.
With legal arms.
There probably were armed citizenry out and about with boats and whatever. It'll never go reported.
Right.
But what about the government that did go house to house collecting guns? What should have the citizens' response been to that?
Well, they can't. The government can't justify that under our Constitution.
No, not at all.
That's why we have a Constitution, just so we can look and see whose acts are lawful and whose acts are unlawful,
and then deal with those.
And deal with it. But unless I kind of liken the militia to the volunteer fire department. The less you have to use it, the better off it is.
That's right. Well said.
It's a
but you got to have it there.
You need it there, and the militia in this country, armed citizenry, has been a thorn in the side. Even in the Japanese in World War II had to look at the armed citizens as a condition of their invading America. When you had millions and millions of people armed, versus going into China where they didn't have arms, you can see what the difference. It gave them tactical problem before they could ever set foot on American soil, that they knew they were going to have to deal with millions, untold millions of armed citizens.
Well, look, in World War II, you mentioned that. Look at what Germany, they went around Switzerland because the populace was armed. An armed populace is the safest thing for the populace.
Well, and they're armed by government mandate.
Government edict.
The government,
exactly
I mean, they have to carry, I don't know, possess certain rifles and each household.
Military weapons.
Yeah.
The Swiss
excuse me, but I think every citizen, at least male citizen in Switzerland, is a member of the militia.
Yes.
They're issued a full auto military rifle at probably 18. There's a story, a true story, I believe it was the Kaiser of Germany visiting the Swiss way back there, and he asked the Swiss dignitary, head of state, what would happen if the Germans came in with all their power. And the Swiss head of state said, we all shoot 5 times to go home. And that was pretty plain. You know, you're outnumbered 5-1. He said, well, we shoot 5 times and go home. That needs to be the attitude of men willing to stand for their families and their homes and their communities. If you're not willing to stand for your country, you've done lost it.
You're right. And unfortunately, Wayne, we've got many in this country, even in leadership, that refuse to stand for this country.
Well, that's a fact, but it's not an excuse.
No, you're right.
It doesn't excuse us. It may be a fact that a lot won't, but I can't use that in front of my maker for a reason that I won't.
Wayne, how would you answer a question like this? Why do we need guns in this country? We don't have anything to be worried about.
We don't have anything to worry about largely because we have guns in this country.
Okay.
I think would be the proper to say that. And as long as we have guns, if we need some training, we need to teach young boys in school that thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. That's the biggest gun control there is, and it comes from the Bible. Let them get out and shoot guns of any kind, every kind, and let them know there's a proper use of arms and an improper use of it. And when you bring that into them young, they don't question it later.
Exactly.
But when I was in the jail down there, so many people, young men, they have no daddies, and no one to explain to them when they're at the early age that they can look up to what ought to be done and what not. And they're left to the streets, and they do what you have to do on the streets.
It's not a pretty thing.
That's not a good thing.
That's not the way this nation was designed. That's not the way families were designed.
No.
Wayne, give me the Wayne Fincher thumbnail sketch of the Second Amendment. If you want to quote it as it is, or if you want to give us your understanding of what this means in 2007 in Northwest Arkansas. What does Second Amendment rights? What does that afford you, and how does that affect your life, my life, and those around us?
Well, the Constitution says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. All I have to do to have absolute protection against the charges brought against me is, number one, show that I'm one of the people. Number two, show that the instruments involved are arms. And I have absolute immunity from any legal, lawful acts of government. All it does is put them outside the law in their actions, where everybody can see it. If you're one of the people in good standing, then you have a right to keep, to possess, to have in your home, or wherever you want to safely store them, or to bear. And one of the key words, parts of bear is to produce or bring forth, and that means to make your own arms. Because if we can't make them, somebody else will tell them we can't have them. They had that in the Revolution. They imported a lot of arms, but they made their own arms. They bore their own arms. Just like a woman bears a child or a tree bears fruit, you take the raw materials and you build your own arms. And that's what the American industrialists have always done. So each individual has a right to go to his shop or whatever and bear his own arm, or pay someone else if he can't do it to do it for them. And that's why we've had the arms industry so long. but they gave a monopoly there in the 34 Gun Control Act of 4 types of basically military arms: the submachine gun, the short barrel shotgun, short barrel rifle, and silencer. They did it under the guise that they were contraband, that they were not military arms, and they could regulate them as contraband, similar to the Harrison Narcotics Act. When they took these arms, the only way they could get to these arms was reach into the scope, infringe the scope of the Second Amendment, and take them out, which is absolutely prohibited by their oath of office and their acts in government. And so they put them in a box called contraband weapons, but not arms. A broken pop bottle would be a weapon, but we wouldn't recognize it really as an arm. But if you were fighting for your life in a place like Stalingrad, anything would work. When they started making the arms and used them in 1939, late onward, they nullified their own claim of non-utility and justified the keeping and bearing of the arms that they said had no military utility. The 34 Gun Control Act has been dead since 1939 by any rule of law or science you want to apply with it.
Well, I was going to save this question till later, but since you brought that up, the question I have is how many times and what has been the outcome of challenges to the 34 gun law since 34?
Well, basically every single one of them has been lost. Even the ones they win, they'll appeal it on to the higher up and lose it there. There's a case called the United States versus Rock Island in 1991 where the court said, told the federal government, when you stop taking the tax money on the arm, 922, the very charge, the statute I charged with violating, they said you made 922 unconstitutional because that's the only nexus you had to the arm with the taxation. When you quit taking the tax on it, you don't have any control of it. I don't believe they appealed it out of that court district. But there's a hodgepodge of cases. It's heads I win, tails you lose. But if it's an arm, I have a right to keep them bearing because I'm one of the people. Exactly. And also, most people don't know it, but you get 2 wild cards to play on every part of the Constitution. One is the preamble, and the other is the oath of office. And you can put that on the top and the bottom of the article you choose to exercise. The Second Amendment comes with the preamble and the oath of office. Each member of government guarantees he will not infringe that right. And if you don't know what the word infringe, look it up. It means to break into, abrogate, to lessen, diminish, refute. A servant in government is not even allowed to speak against the Second Amendment. Not allowed to challenge it in any way, in form, or fashion. All they do is invalidate their standing in their office.
And yet we want, we constantly see them not challenging it, but trying to redefine it by the use of different words, which is just a game of semantics. You're getting back to contracts, which the Constitution is a contract between the people and the government, and the government is the side that is agreeing to the conditions of the people, not the other way around.
Yeah. Actually, in this country, the private citizen's the highest office there is in the United States. The president's my servant. The governor's my servant. He governs my other servants.
Well, getting back to the bad name that's been forced onto the idea of a militia and militias, one of the terms thrown around, and they've really made this a bad word, is you're a bunch of anti-government types. Now, my response to that is don't ever call me non-anti-government. I'm proudly anti-government for this reason. Our Constitution was anti-government. The reason for our Constitution was to prevent government overreach and getting out of control. So the very founders of this country were anti-government. And that's what, Wayne, I think that's what you're doing. You're saying, look, I'm not doing this because I want to have guns. I'm not doing this because I want to kill people. I'm doing this because there's a contract we've got out there, and I want to make sure that they follow it to the letter.
Well, I'm not anti-government. Matter of fact, I love good government. It's what we have now is not what we ordered.
Right. We are the government.
We are the government, and we have let these people take these offices conditionally, that they follow the Constitution explicitly. That's where the problem is.
I understand what Don's saying.
Yes,
He's saying that by practice, those people in those offices have become government, and to the exclusion of the people who really are government.
Well, what I'm saying
is,
if we don't have a healthy fear
Right.
of government,
That's right.
then we're in trouble. And that, to me, I define it as anti-government from that standpoint. I don't want to blow the government up. I don't want to overthrow it. I don't want to shoot anybody.
No.
But I want to make them follow the contract.
Stay in their box.
Stay in their box.
Government's
Exactly right.
like salt. Just the right amount really works good. But when you get too much of it, you can't stand it.
That's right.
And that's about the best way I can say it.
That's well said.
We need so much of it. But when you get more than enough, then it's too much real quick.
Well, you were telling us earlier as we came up here that back in November you had too much government on your property here.
Yes.
Tell us again in short scope what occurred the morning, and I don't remember the actual date.
November 8th.
November 8th. The morning of the 8th. What occurred that day?
I was right back at the house working on one of my elevated deer stands. I was trying to get a roof on it before deer season opened that Saturday. It was a Wednesday morning, and I just backed down it. It's got a long stairway going up to it, and it's a little better for me to back down than it is walk down forward. And so I got down and I turned to walk to front to get some sheet iron to. I was going to tie it on my rope and pull it up, try to get a few sheets of metal up there so I could sit in there when it's raining, because a lot of times the deer is moving around a lot in the rain. And right behind me there was one fellow stepped out and ordered me to get out on the ground or he would shoot, and it took me just a second or so to orient myself, but when I seen he was deadly serious, he had an AR-15, I believe it's full auto machine gun, pointed at my AR-16 at my middle section about 30 foot away. I took just a second or two to orient myself, and he might have told me again to get on the ground or he'd shoot. And I told him, if you just got to kill somebody, go ahead and shoot. I'm not getting on the ground. And I ordered him twice to get his gun off of me in no uncertain terms, and he did. He was shocked. He'd never been talked to like that. And I said, I've not done anything wrong. I'm not getting on the ground. If you just got to kill somebody, go ahead and shoot. And
wow.
He had a change in his demeanor. He'd never met someone like that. And another one come around, and from somewhere I was fixated on that one, and they put the handcuffs on me, and I invoked the Constitution. I started about the 10th Amendment and worked down, and the Arkansas Constitution, of course, to no avail. You know, they don't pay any attention to the Constitution, but they brought me on down the hill here, and one of the fellows acted like he was about to have a heart attack. He flushed, and he couldn't breathe, and I guess a little sarcastically I asked him if he's going to be all right. You know, here I am. I know where I'm going, you know, and the yard was full of them. They had several vehicles right here in this yard. They had a large, I suppose, attack dog, and they had another small Labrador, which they used to smell out, see if I had any drugs or bombs or anything, which I didn't. And they put up the large dog, and they brought me on down here and set me in a chair in the front yard here. And I couldn't get an accurate estimate of how many they were because they were moving in and out, and some I couldn't see, and some were behind me. And I sat right out here in the yard for about 3 hours, and I'd say them 2 to 3 dozen of them, most of them in camo, and some VIPs come along. They wanted me to open the gun safe, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And they said, well, we'll cut into it. And I said, if you're going to break the law, go ahead. I'm not going to help you. And they kept on, and I never would give it to them. Once they said they was going to blow it, and I was going to go ahead and blow it. I'm not opening it. They wanted the key to the building. I said, no, I'm not opening up anything to you. You're violating the law. You do it on your own coin. You're going to break the law. You do it all the way. And they finally brought in I guess a BATF locksmith and drilled them out, to the best of my understanding. I never been back in my home till here when I come back up.
At what point, Wayne, were you apprised of the fact that they had a warrant?
When they set me in the yard, they said they had a warrant. And I said, well, let me see it and read it. And they said, no, you'll tear it up. And I said, no, I'm not going to tear it up. And they held it out about 4 foot away. I said, I can't read that from here. And they said, well, we can't give it to you. You'll tear it up. Well, I said, well, give me a copy of it. Well, they didn't have no copies. And I thought, really? So they took it away, and when they finally come out with my guns, I had several machine guns that they knew we had them. We told the sheriff, we told everybody in the country.
Well, they'd come out and seen your guns.
Well, the sheriff had at our building over here, and we had noticed the BATF through registered mail, and told them either basically rebut our statements here or consider yourself barred by law from any further contact with us. We're not a commercial interest. We're under the flag of the state of Arkansas, the laws of the Constitution of the United States, and guarantee of a Republican form of government. If you can beat that, lay it on the table. If not, you're out of it.
And you asked them to respond if they disagreed, and they did not respond.
They did not respond.
Which tacitly means they agreed.
Approval.
They approved what you said.
Exactly. And we'd notified the government all the way through this, the governor, and repeatedly we've got the receipts where we'd mailed to him, and the public known, sheriff, everybody, state police, the attorney general of the state of Arkansas, BATF, Treasury Department, our senators, our congressmen, sheriff, everybody. They knew it. And yet they didn't want to come out into public, and they wanted to do what they did from behind our backs, and they couldn't answer us publicly. So ultimately, they violated the law and arrested me, which is nothing surprising.
They took you from here to, did they take you directly to Sebastian County?
No, they took me to the Washington County Jail. I spent the night, and I suppose 7 o'clock or so that morning they moved me down to Sebastian County, and I spent the day down there in the federal courthouse. And right toward the evening they put the shackles on your feet and on your hand and started bringing me back up here, and the county deputy did, and somebody said, no, he's not going up there. So they took their shackles and handcuffs and all off, and the federal put theirs on and transported me over to the Sebastian County Jail, where I was for the last 7.5 months.
Well, we got word of the situation. I guess while I was on the air that morning, we got word of the situation and began to make inquiries and found out that's exactly what had occurred. Were you in any way treated in any violently or anything? Any abuse of any nature?
I don't have no problems really. They's a little smart alecky a time or two, but you know, considering the source. No, I wasn't abused anyway, other than having your whole rights and your whole way of life and your guarantee under the Constitution trampled in your face. You know, if that's not abuse enough, that they didn't physically abuse me or anything.
Well, Wayne, though, you got to look at it from their standpoint. You had been having trouble with the law all your life. You've broken the law all your life, haven't you?
No.
Can you tell us how many times you've broken the law? How many times have you been arrested?
None.
How many nights did you spend in jail before the 8th of November?
Well, back in my juvenile days, I got some traffic tickets and spinning my wheel things, and we got in on the watermelon deal one time. We shouldn't have, but really, since I found God, I walked straight in there. I have a lot straighter taskmaster with the Lord above than I do with the federal government.
Exactly.
I keep giving these Australian salutes here.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, you came up for arraignment a few days later down there in Fort Smith, Sebastian County, with the magistrate. Now, was this a short, black-haired woman?
Yeah, she was a woman.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name, but she was also the magistrate when I was on the federal grand jury down there. What occurred during the course of that arraignment?
Well, they basically took me in there and asked if I pled guilty or not. I believe it may get the first and the second appearance mixed up. Maybe the BATF told them what a bad guy I was and what a threat to society I was, and no good could come from me, and so they put me on a $250,000 bond.
Yep.
And they wanted me to put up my land, and I said, no, I'm not putting up my land. The judge told me if I violated the condition of my parole anyhow, I'm paraphrasing, of course, I'd forfeit the land. It's on the transcript, so you can read exactly what she said.
We've had it posted on the website. So
and I said, no way, no how am I going to lose my family's inheritance here. I'd already talked to my family, one daughter, about putting this and giving it to my daughters before this ever came up. And I've got one piece of land, 2 daughters, and it doesn't divide any way equal. And they agreed to take it jointly, and that got me that problem solved later on. But they said I was indigent, not I. I just, when they wanted to talk, I said I need a lawyer. I don't have any money to hire one, which is the absolute truth. So they came back in with a questionnaire, pretty lengthy, and they said we're going to check this out. And I really didn't figure that I would be indigent, but they said I was, and they got me a lawyer. So that was their decision and their finding, not mine.
Right, exactly. And you sat in jail for another, 2.5, 3 months before you came up here for trial?
About 2 months. They scheduled 60 days after arraignment to January the 8th, I believe it was. I got sick in jail there at Gallstones. I was very sick, and they postponed it one day and started 9th until the 8th of January.
Okay. I was at all but one of the hearings of the trial. Don was at the hearing that I wasn't at. And then, of course, we both made the last day of the trial when they came in with their determination. Give us a bit of a rundown on what you saw occur at the trial, what you saw needed to occur at the trial, and how in the world these 12 people who are allowed to walk around free during the day, how those 12 people found you guilty.
Well, they were ordered to find me guilty repeatedly, that there was no evidence allowed to be entered. The judge told them over and over and over again that if he had these guns and he knew they were full auto, you must convict. You must convict, you must convict. And he basically ordered them to find me guilty.
I've been wanting to say this, along with what we've heard from you in your vast knowledge of the Constitution, not only what it says, but what it was written for and the reason for it. I can visualize people who may be watching this video out there saying, well, if you're so sure about that, why didn't you win in court? And the answer to that question, and I think this is very important, is because that very defense that you defined, that you have as an American citizen, the judge would not allow you to use that defense in the court. The judge would not allow you to even speak in front of the jury.
Right.
So that's why you didn't win your argument, because the judge knew you would have, in my opinion. He knew that he could not win against the Constitution, and he just said, okay, I'm not going to let you talk about it.
Because the judge knows what the Constitution says as well. And your argument, your constitutional argument, would have put all of these fears to rest. Certainly. Your constitutional argument would have clearly shown that you are within your rights as an American citizen, resident of the state of Arkansas, citizen of the state of Arkansas. You were well within your rights in the things you were doing. So when that was left out, what was left for your attorney to argue? I feel like he had both hands tied behind his back and was hopping around on one leg trying to fight this battle.
No, there wasn't any trial there. It was just an order to convict, and basically the jury was the instrument that did it. It was not a trial there, because I was allowed to put on no evidence, to bring no evidence in. We had the evidence.
Yep.
But
I'm going to go back to my journalistic theory here. If a journalist is arrested by the government, let's say, for using words the government didn't want them to use, that journalist would immediately know, and I'm sure their lawyers would tell them, they can't do this to you because you are guaranteed the right to freedom of speech and expression by the Constitution.
They would invoke the First Amendment right off the bat.
Right off the bat. But let's say they went into a courtroom and the judge says, you're guilty of breaking a particular law over here that we all know is wrong, and don't bring up the First Amendment in this courtroom. I will not allow the use of the First Amendment as a defense on your part. Now that's what they did to you.
That's exactly what they did. And if that scenario you mentioned there, Don, played out, there would be rioting in the streets.
That's right.
But because we're dealing with arms, And we do have a growing percentage of this nation who have no idea what arms are, have no idea of their use, and they have been intimidated and scared to death about what arms are and what they can do. Because of that, we have people will not stand up for their own rights nor for the rights of the neighbor.
That's right. And a lot of people say, well, you know, we can't just, people can't go around with atomic bombs and all this sort of thing. Well, legally they could right now. But they say, what are we going to do about all the guns and the robberies and the people killing? Well, you can change that. If you want to take people's guns away from them, if you think that'll help, of course it'll make matters worse. But we can, the Constitution is a living document in only one way, and that's through the proper constitutional legal method of an amendment. And we can amend the Second Amendment if the people want to. There's been no attempt because they know the American people won't put up with it.
That's exactly right.
Every time something come up from the 911 to Katrina to Waco, people have went and bought guns. A lot of people that didn't even own a gun have went out and bought guns.
That's right.
It's going the other way. The Bill Clinton was the best arms salesman America's ever had.
Well, he had help from Janet Reno.
Well,
I mean, don't give him all the credit. He had a lot of help from Ms. Reno. Wayne, had you been able to? I heard a bit of when they allowed you to get on the stand, and the judge basically said, "Well, what would you say if you could say it?" I heard a bit of it there as you were allowed to get on the stand and see if your testimony qualified. How would you have handled this defense had it been totally in a constitutional court? How would you have handled this defense?
I'd started out with the 13th Amendment, that you're bringing back some of the incidents, and they call it the badges of slavery, because that's exactly the way the slaves were treated. They could have only the kind of gun they were allowed to carry and keep. A lot of them had to turn it in at nightfall. They had to carry a piece of paper from their master, and they couldn't get off the plantation. And this is basically what we slipped back into. I'd start with the 13th Amendment, that this gun laws basically had returned to that portion of slavery. I dropped down to the 10th Amendment, that this is really a 10th Amendment case here. It would never get to the Second Amendment. They came into the Republic of Arkansas under its flag and swept its Constitution off the floor, and basically denied the Republican form of government guaranteed to the people, the state and the people. You'll notice everyone quotes the 10th Amendment as the power of the state, but you'll notice also, or to the people.
Right.
The people are the primary holder of the 10th Amendment.
There is no state without the people.
The state is the agent of the people.
Right.
So whatever power the state has is already transferred conditionally to the state, and the people always have the right to take it back up. The power to be armed is one of the fundamental powers of a republic, an independent republic, and the BATF totally violated the 10th Amendment. Then I dropped down to the 9th Amendment. Unenumerated rights are equally valid. If there were no Second Amendment, I could claim the right to keep and bear arms on both the 10th and the 9th. Then I dropped down to the 8th and say I was held in excessive bond, and the penalties for this case, even if I were guilty, are excessive. To put a man in jail, I got a 6.5-year sentence for having a shotgun with a barrel 3 inches too short. It would be unheard of in any civilized country that if that's all he did, if the barrel had been 3 inches longer, I'd have been fine and dandy. You can't even construe that with sanity, and comprehend it in a sane setting. That so much you can buy the same Browning gun that semi-belt fed. You can put trigger adapters on, shoot as fast or faster, and it's all perfectly legal.
Right.
So the 6.5-year penalty twice is excessive. I was held under excessive bond. I couldn't contribute to my own defense, and they would never get past any of those. I didn't have a trial by jury. I had a trial by the judge.
And that brings into another
exactly.
Sixth Amendment.
Right.
They wasn't an impartial jury.
No.
They were a sorcerer's jury. And so on and on, the 4th, the 5th, the 4th, the 2nd, the 1st.
And what a lot of people don't know, and obviously the ones on the jury, is that any jurist in any situation does not have to obey any rule the judge puts down. They have the right to judge by their own conscience. They can judge not only the defendant guilt, but they can also judge the law.
The law itself. That's exactly right.
And if I were on your jury, having seen what you had, I would have acquitted you on the basis of you were not being treated constitutionally, period.
I believe the jury would have too if they thought
Yeah,
they
if the
were
judge
not
had let them know that, and the judge should tell that to the jury.
You weren't called for his jury, were you?
I haven't been, since I've been talking about this jury nullification, I haven't been called for a
You
jury.
think you might be blackballed? I haven't been either.
There are
But
Supreme
few
Court
people
decisions.
realize that
Right.
an individual jurist has more power in a courtroom than the judge.
That's right. That's exactly. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
That's
the
the way
judge
it
is
should
nothing
be.
but a referee.
Yeah.
There's Supreme Court decisions that backing that up, that the jury is the judge of both the law and the fact. But if they don't know it, if they're overruled, a lot of them just don't have the standing, the power to go on and do what's right. They simply don't know their power that well.
If we don't know our rights, we don't have our
We
rights.
can't exercise
That's exactly right. With all that said, and with the sentence now having been pronounced, you stayed in jail a long time again, and then they called you back out to give you your sentence. Give us the exact rundown on the sentence that was given and why it was given as it was, because I wasn't there that day.
Well, they enhanced my sentence. I got more time for things I weren't even charged with than I did for the actual gun thing. I got 10 points, one for being a leader of a crime ring, the militia. I think it's 4 points that, and then they charged me with all of the guns that they found instead of just the ones I had at my house. And those 10 points got me something like 4 years more on things I weren't even charged with.
So they got you on RICO laws?
No, it was just the enhancement.
Okay.
The federal government enhances it.
Mm-hmm.
But they defined the militia as a what now?
A criminal organization. I was the ringleader of a criminal organization.
That had broken no law.
Well, one fellow pointed out, well, where's the ring? You're the only one involved. And these things will be appealed. And it's left up to others besides myself to determine the outcome of all this.
Right. Well, that was, of course, my next question. After they give you the sentence, they gave you 78 months with time served,
Mm-hmm.
so you're down to 70 months. That's 6.5 years.
Yeah.
That's no, not 6.5 years. That's
There'll be 6 years left.
6
And then
years.
there's approximately a year off for good behavior, if I understand right. You get 15%, 54 days a year for good behavior.
That's assuming you're going to be good.
Well, I intend to. So that would leave about 5 years ahead of me.
Now, with that, where should that be served? Do you have any idea? at this
Yeah, I
point?
got a letter from the U.S. Marshal today. It'll be at Forest City, I believe it is, eastern Arkansas.
That's it.
And I've got to report in Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
Tuesday, 2 o'clock. You got to report there. You report.
No, I have to
You got to provide your
take my own ticket
transportation.
down there.
Okay, you got to provide your rope. Then I understand. I'm sorry, that wasn't very nice. My next question here was, what about your plan for appeal now? What's the
There's a law firm and at least one lawyer. There's a law firm up there, but one of them is taking this without any cost, without fee. I've still got to pay for all of the cost of it, which
For their expenses.
yeah, they will all the copying probably for when he goes to St. Louis to argue the case, and probably airfare up there and back and hotels and the legal briefs. I'm up in the air where the judges tried to take away my indigent status. Although I did own this property here, there's really no income. It's a nice place to live, but there's no income off of it.
Right.
The judge gave me a going over about I could have mortgaged this and et cetera, et cetera. He tried to get me to say that I could, and he asked the last thing he said, "Is it a fact you could have mortgaged this land?" I said, "No, sir, it's not a fact." He said, "According to county law, I have to have a 60-foot right-of-way out of here over about 5 properties, and I can't, without that, I can't do it."
Right.
And I said, "That's your law, not mine." So that was, it's up in the air now. I don't know where we're at on that.
But if you were to mortgage a property, how would you pay that mortgage if you're in jail?
I couldn't. I will not mortgage it. It couldn't. Our family can't pay it.
What would be this request?
We all work, but we just barely get by.
Well, you you can coulda, shoulda, if I had anything. I mean,
Well,
you
I'd
can
rather sit
play
in
those
jail.
games all day. Yeah.
I will not mortgage my family property.
No,
That's
and
why I sat in jail for 7.5 months there. I could have been out.
Do you expect, and I ask this not being cognizant of what the next level of the appeals court actually, how they operate. I don't know that much
I'm
about
not sure
it.
either.
Do you expect, though, that the constitutional arguments can be brought in at that time, or are they going to simply allow for appeal on the various things that were stated before the jury?
That I don't know. If the Constitution brought in, I'll walk out there a free man. It's just a matter of time. If it's not, I'll do the next 5 years or so down here in the federal prison. If the Constitution brought in, I walk out. If not, I don't. It's that simple.
Well, Wayne, I know a lot of our viewers, and I'm hoping to be able to play this interview at some point on more than one radio show, are going to be interested in helping to raise whatever funds are going to be required for the travel of these attorneys, for their
Yes.
room and board, and there's going to be other expenses for filings, for copies, all those things. Do you have a ballpark figure of the number that's going to be?
The lawyer said probably something like $5,000 to this first go around.
Okay.
And then he said he didn't need it all at once. They wouldn't pressure for money. And then if it has to go on to higher court, there'll be some more. I don't know whether they're going to try to make me pay the lawyers back or try to go back in the case and add more fines. You know, you can't predict what's going on with these people.
And I agree
You
with
simply
that.
cannot. You can read the instruction book. If you go in there, you do not know what's going to happen.
Well, I've got a lot of questions to ask about your time there in jail and so on, and I know our time's getting short here. We're about to lose our daylight. The question that I've had several people ask me, and they wanted me to ask you, knowing what you know today, how differently would you have lived your life the last 15 years if you knew exactly what you knew 15 years ago when you began this working with the Second Amendment and the Constitution?
Well, I can clarify. I knew exactly what was going to happen when I started this. If the law wasn't honored, I knew exactly where I was going. I wouldn't change anything. I might have been a little more determined. I might have done a better job, but I did about as well as I could. But you can't. We've got men coming back from Iraq in body bags.
Sure.
I'm sure they'd trade places with me if they could. Some of them come back burned up, and my troubles are small compared to theirs.
And yet, you're not going to like me saying this, but you're fighting for the same thing they
Same
are.
thing
That's
that
exactly
they are.
right. That's exactly
This American form of government that our founding fathers earned on the battlefield, and they bled and died. The revolution sounds like a very romantic thing, but if you read about the ones that died in the prison ships off of Boston Harbor,
Yep.
healthy men went out and skeletons were dropped in the ocean. Towns were burnt. People were captured on the high seas and shipped to Britain and around. People died wounded in the battlefields. Their family, no one to take care of them. And they fought for something greater than what they had, and that's what I'm fighting for. My present comfort doesn't weigh in this matter. What I'm fighting for will live beyond what I do.
That's exactly
And liberty is going to be the order of the universe under God. These people that don't love liberty here don't need to worry about it in the next world. I live my life because I know I'm going to stand in front of my Creator someday, and that's what I temper my action to. And so I could do no less. If I could do anything, I'd done more than what I've already done. I'd have tried to been better at it, but under circumstances, I've done about all I can. But my Creator will not let me do less than what I've done, and so I don't. It hurts, but that's just the way it is. You just have to take whatever life sends you and try to walk honorably before God in it.
Well, there's nobody in their right mind who's ever walked off to war excited and
No.
enthused about it. It's
No.
always, if you're in your right mind, you know that the chance of failure is there, and
Yes.
chance
liberty
to
has a
process.
price.
That's right.
And the audience and people all over the United States have written me. And there's been other people carrying this load. I can't carry it alone, but others carrying it for me. So it's kind of hard to get people to understand. I've won the battle. I showed up. I stood for what this country and our God means. The others have already lost it, attacked it. I feel sorry for them. I really do. That they had a chance to honor their God and their country, and they choose to go the other way. They'll have to answer for it. But whatever comes, whatever goes, I know I did right, and I will continue to do right.
Wayne, before we get off here, I want to thank you in front of the camera for what you're doing for all of us.
Well,
I think it's 100% for me as well, my friend. And you're in my prayers daily. You're in the prayers of my church daily. I've talked to my church about you. You know, it's not just a small audience of people on a little radio show. I have people that know that I know you, that ask me questions. I was down in Dallas this last weekend. In fact, I've been down there several times. But I was down in Dallas this last weekend, and someone said, well, how's that Wayne Fincher guy doing? And I told him I hope we get to see him before he goes off to start his sentence. But I said, keep praying for him. That's going to be the key. Continue to pray for him. You've had a lot of unique experiences in jail and dealing with individuals in jail, have you not?
yes, you know, when I got there, God was already working in that jail, and when I left, He was still working in that jail. He'd been there for many years. There were a lot of men that, some of them said they were glad to be put back in jail to get them out of the drug life they were living. They knew they were going down, but they couldn't quit it. And some of them thank God for being taken out and put in jail for a while till they could kind of reorient. I talked to a lot of men about their souls, and there were probably more than you'd think that were on their way to some degree or another, working their way towards God when they come out of there. I know a lot of people pray for people in jails, but they never hear that God is working it. One of the fellows came up to the Washington County jail and wrote a letter that they had a prayer circle in that jail, you know. And I've heard of people, some old lifers down in the pens that pray, and they get results. One fellow, he knew of cancer being healed and people's AIDS being healed right there in the prison, because I guess some of them people in there for life that turn their life to God in there, they don't have nothing. That's all they do. And there's some there that know their God in the prison. So, you know, God will find you. Anyone will open his heart up to God, God will be there, no matter where you're at on this earth, and no matter how dark a hole they put you in. And it's not a pleasant place to be, but if God's there, then I can be there too. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's what David said. He said, "If I go to hell," he said, "you'll be with me there." It's important to have that understanding that our Creator, our Heavenly Father, He's never dropped one. He's never dropped one.
He never will.
And He's never said oops.
No.
So I'm glad to know that your faith seems to have been strengthened in the course of
Yeah,
this, rather than weaker. You seem to be stronger.
Better man than I come out there and I was and went in stronger. And
I don't know if that's you pretty good. As far as I'm concerned, you've been a pretty decent individual.
Well, you know, you just all of us stand to get a little closer to God.
Yeah.
And when you get in a place like that, you know, you get further away closer, and it was get closer for me. You know, you get time to. There's areas in my life I've improved on. I guarantee you now. You know, it becomes obvious, and it just seems like a natural thing to do. But I feel like I don't feel the slightest condemnation from God whatsoever. I know that this is our birthright as American people, and I did what I have to do, and I don't take it back. Whatever happens, happens, and it'll look different on Judgment Day someday.
You're exactly right.
It sure will.
Well, I guess in closing, we spent the last hour or so with our good friend Wayne Fincher, and been dealing with his plight, the things that have occurred in the course of his imprisonment, his trial, and now he's facing going off to federal prison and the appeal process. We ask for your prayers, ask for your concern for Wayne. We'll get you some addresses if you want to write Wayne while he's in prison, and we'll try to keep you in touch with things that are going on. Of course, with us tonight has been dear friend Don Bright, and thank you for your participation.
No, I was
Great to have
lucky
you
to
up
be here, Johnny.
And I'm Johnny Tittle, and we thank you.